Chapter 13, Communication. Today's objectives, I'm going to explain the elements of the communication process. I'm also going to compare the major directions of communication within organizations, discuss why face-to-face is a richer information media than email, and summarize how technology is changing the way individuals communicate in organizations, and describe the role played by interpersonal communication in organizations. I'm going to give examples of differences in the way cultures communicate, and I'm going to identify barriers to effective communication. And lastly, suggest ways in which communication in organizations can be improved. Just move this. Okay. Communication is the glue that holds organizations together. Communication assists organizational members to develop long-range strategic plans, respond to changes in the organizational environment, manage internal talent, and engage in virtually all organizationally relevant behaviors. Improving our ability to communicate effectively should be a top priority. The importance of communication is that it helps organizations. It helps by accomplishing individual and organizational goals, implement and respond to organizational change, coordinate activities, and engage in virtually all organizational relevant behaviors. Communication breakdowns are pervasive. Ineffective communication creates ineffective organizations. Problems arise when informal remarks are distorted, kidding leads to anger, and directives are misunderstood. Communication itself is unavoidable in a functioning organization. Only effective communication is avoidable. Everything one does communicates something in some way to somebody. The only question is, with what effect? Effective communication is common understanding between a communicator and a receiver. Verbal or nonverbal common signals are used to convey information. In an organizational, information flows vertically, horizontally, and diagonally. Here's a general model of communication. We start off with the communicator, and the communicator has an encoding message, and then it's delivered by a specific medium, whether it's written, verbal, and then or unverbal, and then decoding the message, and then gets to the receiver, and then you have the feedback. In many instances, if it's not understood, it's just noise. Messages sent via physical signals: head, face, and eye movements, posture, physical distance, gestures, voice tone, and clothing choices. This is also influenced by such factors as gender and race. And just as important as verbal communications, sometimes more so, it is said that 95% of communication is nonverbal. And being able to read those subtle signals is very, very important to understand and decipher exactly what communication is being done. There are unique qualities to nonverbal communication. It's more apparent to observers than communicators. It's also susceptible to multiple interpretations or misinterpretation, and also can be difficult to suppress and can contradict verbal messages. When people are, saying positive things and then shaking their head no, that's a, it's called, that's a disconnect or verbal dissonance. Facial expressions and eye contact and movements provide information about emotions. Physical cues indicate emotional intensity. Poker players are very keen to observe all of these nonverbal messages because they're known as tells, and that can sometimes be interpreted by what type of hand someone has by reading their nonverbal messages. Physical cues indicate emotional intensity, and communicators often say more information than is obtained in verbal messages. When verbal and nonverbal messages conflict, receivers place more faith in nonverbal cues. Downward communication flows from higher levels to the hierarchy to those in lower levels. It includes job instructions, memos, policy statements, procedures, manuals, company publications, often incomplete, inadequate, and inaccurate. And there's also decision stages communicating with organizations. We have speculate, digest, deliberate, and then draw a conclusion. Upward communication is at a lower level than the receiver. It includes suggestion boxes, group meetings, and appeal or grievance procedures. Functions of upward communication. This provides managers feedback about problems, organizational issues, day-to-day operations, is management's primary source of feedback. It relieves employee tension by allowing lower-level organization members to share relevant information with superiors. It also encourages employees' participation and involvement, thereby enhancing organizational cohesiveness. Horizontal communication is overlooked in most organizational designs. It's necessary for coordination and integration of diverse organizational functions. It's often necessary for coordination, and it can provide social need satisfaction. Also, the facilitation is often left to the individual managers on how to handle horizontal communication. Diagonal communication is the least used channel of communication. It's important where members cannot communicate effectively through the other channels, and sometimes the most efficient communication method in terms of time and money. Communicating externally. Present products, services, a positive corporate image. It attracts employees, attracts customers. It also gains attention from the media and the local community. And it's typically used for PR or public relations, advertising, promoting, and customer and client patient surveys. Information richness is the amount of information that can be transmitted or communicated effectively. And it's important that you communicate effectively. You can be communicating, but it may not be effective. And a medium with high richness is likely to result in common understanding. Real-time communication permits instant feedback. So communication is great, but if the message is not being received, or if the message is not being received correctly, it can create more problems than it could resolve. Common communication media in the 21st century organizations. You have first face-to-face, telephone, video conference, memos, letters, personalized email, voicemail, general email, financial reports, flyers, bulletin boards, computer. The richness of face-to-face is the highest. Telephone is second, but low is memos, letters, and general email, financial reports is very low. An example of face-to-face is asking a supervisor for a raise. And the benefit is the ability to adjust the message according to the real-time feedback that you're getting back from the person that you're talking to. Telephone conversations, video conference, the richness is high, and you're meeting with virtual group members. It's also efficient, less costly, and less time-consuming than traveling to a central location. Memos, letters, personalized email, the richness is low, and you communicate a company service policy to a customer. It's efficient and cost-effective way to communicate routine information. General email, financial reports, flyers, bulletin boards, computer reports, very low richness. For instance, an example of that would be an annual report to shareholders that many people don't read. And standardized information for large audiences, but generally they get the report, they don't read it cover to cover, they may just read a couple pages here and there. Moving on, technology and communication. We have the internet, the intranet, and the extranet. Email, messaging, social networks, smartphones, voicemail, video conference, teleconference, e-meeting, collaboration, all different types of technology and communication. Let's compare some of them. Intranet is a private, protected electronic communication system within an organization, and you can't communicate outside of it. It's used to communicate proprietary and organization-specific information that's not for public use. The extranet connects employees with individuals external to the organization. The dangers of email use. Unedited and poorly written messages will reflect poorly on the sender if you're sending messages that are riddled with errors, and it looks uneducated, quite frankly. There's also a lack of privacy because emails can be intercepted. And erase messages, you think you got rid of something, it will remain on the drive and can be found. Hard to maintain email files that adhere to record-keeping standards, and messages are often monitored, and it's ineffective for complex data and information. Instant messages, real-time communication among geographically dispersed employees. It's an inexpensive alternative to phone calls for travel and offers a document trail. And you can also integrate this instant messages with voice and video. And it demands the immediate attention of its users. Text messaging, it competes with traditional marketing. It's less expensive Young people prefer it, and most text messages are actually read. Social networking, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, TikTok, etc., rapidly becoming actually part of the communication fabric. And it's used for a variety of purposes. It's not exclusive to the young, although they tend to use it more frequently, and increasingly monitored by businesses as they're seeing how viral things can go and how messages can get out very quickly. And it's also a powerful communication tool that can reach around the world in seconds. Smartphones. 81% of Americans had smartphones in 2019, and I'm sure in 2025 that number is in the 90s. It's increased need to stay connected with colleagues, customers, and other stakeholders. I recall that when 9/11 came, everyone started using their iPhones or cell phones, whatever, and would say, I love you as they hung up. And the incidence of cell phone use, I think, was significantly increased after that kind of black swan kind of event. Everyone got kind of scared about communicating with their loved ones, and that kind of increased that activity. So, smartphones represent an increased need to stay connected with colleagues, customers, and other stakeholders. It also stores addresses, phone numbers, customer prices, and independent data. They also act as mini computers, and many people can't live without them. I know I can't live without my cell phone. Can you? Voicemail. Recorded messages account for 90% of telephone communication in organizations. Voicemail is more popular than email. Messages are delivered without interruption. Communication Communicators can focus on the reason for the call without any interruptions, and voice tone minimizes inaccurate message taking in time zone values. Voicemail best practices. Organize thoughts before picking up the phone. Identify a specific brief request. State your name, the time of call, date, company name, the reason for the call. Be precise and keep the message simple. Say what you would like to proceed to do, give a reason for the request, say thank you, and finish with feel free to call me at blah, 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 blah. Electronic meetings. Using software and network computers to automate meetings. Facilitators can poll meeting participants, analyze voting results, create detailed reports, and you can also use AI to take meeting notes. Allow businesses and schools to continue to meet during the pandemic. Reduces travel needs as well. Overloading employees with new toys, additional information, and technologies actually can reduce efficiency. Social interaction is lost, and most verbal and nonverbal cues are omitted. Anonymity and depersonalization are concerns, but it doesn't mention the fact that with AI, you can actually have a, an entity take the notes, and the person who usually takes the notes can actually focus more on the meeting, and then we can edit the AI meeting notes afterwards. Interpersonal communication. Communication flows from person to person and face to face in group meetings. It includes instant messaging and video conferencing, and it varies from direct orders to casual expressions. Includes both verbal and non-verbal forms. And communication problems are tied to perceptual differences and interpersonal style differences. Multicultural communication, behavior, time, words, space. Successful multicultural communication, preparation. Become familiar with the cultural differences because there are cultural differences. Flexible thinking, lay aside ethnocentric tendencies. And humility, assuming communication is incomplete. What are the barriers to effective communication? They include frame of reference, selective listening, value judgment or bias, source credibility, and filtering, as well as in-group language, status differences, time pressures, and communication overload. All of these are effective barriers to communication. So how do you improve communication in an organization? How do you become a better communicator? Strive to be understood and strive to understand. There's a phrase that we say we have 2 ears for listening and 1 mouth for speaking. So it's more important to listen than it is to speak. Technique to improve communications, following up, empathy, effective timing, regulating information flow, repetition, simplifying language, utilizing feedback, encouraging mutual trust, and using the great time. How do you promote ethical communications? Perhaps principles for internal organizational communications. Do not intentionally deceive each other, because that's going to destroy trust. Do not purposely harm an organization member, and treat organizational members justly. While you promote ethical communications, you can improve communication by conducting yourself in this. Improving communication between organizations, narrowing the communication gap. And this is just a chart that reiterates what we just said. Following up, regulating information, empathy, repetition, and depending on your field of experience, is really depending on the type of communicator you are. The more experience you have, hopefully the better communicator that you are. Okay, in review, we explained the elements in the communication process. We compared the major directions of communications within organizations, outward, downward, sideways. Discuss why face-to-face is richer medium than email. We summarize how technology is changing the way individuals communicate in organizations, and we describe the role played by interpersonal communication in organizations. And we give examples of differences in the way cultures communicate, identify effective barriers to communication, and we suggested ways in which communication in organizations can be improved. I thank you for listening.